Everybody, welcome to Daily Distinction. We haven't been live on Instagram for quite a while, so I thought I'd jump on Instagram as well live today. So one of the problems with Instagram is because this is set to 16 by 9, the wide frame. Instagram is shot differently, so you're seeing a different view than what the folks that are watching on YouTube or Twitter or Facebook might be. But thank you for being here. For those of you jumping on right now to join us on Instagram. Thanks to everybody watching right now. Holy cow, a bunch of folks jumping on here real quick. I really appreciate that. Thank you for being here. Hey, before we get into today's topic, which I think is a really important one, I just spent about an hour and a half on a virtual seminar this morning with my friend Phil Jones. Phil has joined me on a previous version of Daily Distinction. And if it's still on YouTube, if you want to go back and look it up, you can see where Phil joined me on Daily Distinction. And Phil is the author of that fantastic book that I've talked about a lot called Exactly What to Say. Anyway, Phil had me as his guest today for a program that he does in the hearing aid industry. And we were talking, and it inspired me in terms of what we were talking about with this really, really important aspect for any of us who are in business, a question that we need to be asking. And so that's what we're going to be asking. That's what we're going to be talking about on today's Daily Distinction. Ted, always great to see you. Thank you for being here. Thank you, by the way, for signing up to join us at the Distinction Summit. Charles, good to see you. Hazy and cool, San Jose. Cool beats what you had going on this last weekend, right? I just looked. It's 79 degrees right now in the backyard here in Vegas. Not even 80. How about that? I can't believe it. We have got a little reprieve from the hot weather. Mike, so good to see you. Your Chiefs kick off tonight. My Colts are in Jacksonville on Sunday, so excited about that. I can't wait for the NFL to start. I am just so excited. And Mike, you got to be thrilled about your Chiefs starting another season. And Charles, I know you're pretty happy about the Niners. Looking good and starting, and man, we're excited to see what Philip Rivers does with the Colts this year. Scott, good afternoon to you. So glad that you were here. Hey, Dwayne, haven't seen you for a couple days. Hope all is well with you. Pam, great to see you as always. Shelley says it's 82. It's hotter in Southern Indiana than in Vegas right now. My gosh, that's crazy. 63 though. You got us beat, Charles. 63 in California. My goodness, that's crazy. Hey, want to remind you, too, again, about the Distinction Summit. I know that Charles has signed up. Ted has signed up. We've got some folks here that have already signed up for it. I'm really excited about that. Thank you for doing that. It's Stand Out, Earn More. And for those that are watching who may not have heard me talk about it before, what that means is that when you stand out, you earn more. Everything that we want in life is currently controlled by somebody else. That's hard for many people to accept, but it's true. If you want more sales, the customer decides. If you want better employees, they get to decide if they're going to come to work for you or not, if they're people that you want. If you want your kid in a better school, the admissions committee decides. Whatever that you're desiring, the final decision on that, if you don't have it already, man, it's within somebody else's decision about whether or not they're going to choose you. So how do you get selected? How do you get chosen? What does it take? And if you're just fitting in with everybody else, what's the compelling reason to choose your business or your product or your service or you as a salesperson? Or why would you choose you instead of your competition? And the great thing I'm so excited about the Distinction Summit is, we meet here every day for, 15, 20, 30 minutes and we talk about an issue, but we're really going to have a chance to drill deeply into that and be really specific and really tactical in terms of here's what you do to get started. We're going to have hot seats where we'll talk with folks and pull them out of the audience and specifically focus on their situation so you can learn from that. We're going to have some guest speakers that we'll be announcing next week that are just off the charts fantastic. You can probably guess who a couple of them are that you've seen here before. So we are really, really excited with what's going to be going on. And I'm so excited for those of you that already signed up. If you haven't already, just go to Distinction summit.com. At Distinction, say, Michelle, good to see you. At distinctionsummit.com, you're going to find everything that you need to tell you about it. We're going to be adding a lot more to that website in the next week or two as we have all of our speakers, more of the agenda, but would love for you to sign up now. All right, so here's the big question. The big question of the day is simply this. If you had new competition, what would you do? If new competition came to your area or to your field, how would you respond? How would you respond in your approach to your current customers? How would you respond in your approach to your prospective customers? How would you respond in your marketing and in your advertising? What would you do if there was new competition in your field, in your area? What would you do? Oh, thanks for posting that, Shelly. I appreciate you getting the link up there for everybody. Thank you for that. What would you do? How would you market differently if you had new competition? How would you communicate differently if you had new? And let's add this to it. Really good competition, really tough competition. On the call I was just on with Phil, one of the things that they talked about in the hearing aid industry is that the new competition isn't just other hearing aid stores, right? Other hearing aid dealers or whatever. It's Costco and Sam's Club is getting into it. So you can get your hearing aid now at Costco, or you can order a hearing aid from Amazon. So if you have new competition, it doesn't necessarily mean that somebody exactly what if Costco suddenly decided that they were going to get in your field? What if Costco suddenly decided they were going to whatever it is that you do? Charles, what if Costco decided they're going to have real estate offices in every one of their stores? So while you're in Costco, you can check out. How would you respond to that? What would you do? If somebody else was going to come in and disrupt you, what do you suppose it is that they do? What would they do to disrupt you? Dwayne, excuse me. They do every week. I try not to have to do something special because I want to be proactive and always in touch. Yeah, that's what. But disruption happens even with companies that are doing a good job, and even with businesses that are doing a good job. It's not like every taxi company was terrible. I mean, look, there were some bad taxi companies, but Uber is the classic disruption example. So what would you do? It's not that every taxi company was bad, but the industry got disrupted. It's not like every phone was horrible, but Apple totally blew it out of the water. It's not like every bookstore sucked, but Amazon came in and dominated the book business and then dominated every other business. And, Walmart wasn't sitting around thinking they were going to get disrupted. I mean, isn't it fascinating? Sears disrupted Montgomery Ward. Right? Montgomery Ward was the nation's leading retailer for decades. And then they got disrupted. How did they get disrupted? Sears came along with a catalog, right? Boy, as old school as that sounds, right? How did Sears get disrupted? They were in the malls. They had high prices. They didn't have everything there. Walmart goes out and they're outside the mall, but you can get everything almost at Walmart at low prices every day. And Walmart destroyed Sears. And now Amazon comes along. And Walmart is doing their best to stay ahead. And you got to compliment Walmart, because where Montgomery Ward folded because of Sears and Sears folded because of Walmart to a great degree, Walmart's hanging on. Maybe because they asked this question. They should have asked it earlier, perhaps. But they maybe asked this question. Hey, if somebody was coming along to disrupt us, what would they do? Here's the hardest thing. When you're doing pretty well, it's a difficult time to think about somebody kicking your tail, right? I mean, if you think about it, and I'm going to use a sports analogy. I know they're overused, but as much as I hate the New England Patriots, You got to give Belichick a lot of credit. You know why? Because he always makes it feel like this is going to be the year that we're really, and he prepares his team. Right? They don't rest on their laurels. Yet, how many teams have we seen that win a Super Bowl? Mike, I'm worried about your Chiefs for this reason, right? How many teams do you see that attain this great success only to have trouble the next year? Only to have trouble the next year. That is a challenge. So you got to ask this question. Okay, if you were going to be disrupted, what do you think they would do? I mean, if you're Walmart, you could sit there and say, what would they do? How could they make it easier? Maybe they deliver. Like enterprise rental car. They bring the car to you. Maybe now that's hard to imagine, but you got to think outside the realm of your own industry. Think about it and then write it down. Write it down. If somebody was going to disrupt you, what would they do? How would they do it? What would be the actions they would take to disrupt you? Write it down. Think about it. Consider it. Think about it very, very deeply. Michelle, here's a big one. I'm not worried about new competition, feel not as huge, but I'm an expert, feel well-known, extremely active, creating content, secure with what I have to offer. Yeah. Michelle, I'm with you. I believe you. Yet that's exactly the point where we need to be asking that question. Because the moment where we don't worry about it is the moment we become really vulnerable with it. Right? Yeah, personal connections, return clients, referrals, important. So the question then, Charles, becomes what could make them go someplace else? What could make them go someplace else? Now, part of it is if you didn't execute at the level at which you've been executing. Part of the reason that you're doing what you're doing now is because you've been executing at such a high level. So one of it would be, and that would be part of it. If for me as a speaker, we get repeat business and return business when there were meetings going on. And how did we get that? It's because I did a great job. If I do a bad job, then there's no reason to expect somebody's going to come back. Same with you, right? But what could disrupt you? I mean, I'm going through that right now. It never occurred to me. Now, after 9/11, it should have, because 9/11, all the flights shut down, meetings shut down, and I should have been sitting there with a legal pad and my thoughts thinking, okay, what if something happens that shuts everything down? What would I do? But yet, man, things are going great and we were booking and everything's fantastic. And everything shuts down. So what happens? Mike, once the drive and desire to get the tops accomplished, it has to be much more difficult to keep up. Yeah, exactly. Once you've had the parade and you've held that trophy, there's something challenging about strapping it on and going back out there to do it again. It's so much easier to get to the top than to stay there. So what do? Dwayne, they offer crazy low prices as a hook. Never try and beat the price. Yes, exactly. And price matters price always matters. Don't misunderstand me. Price always matters. But it becomes a really major factor when customers don't see a meaningful difference between us and the competition. I mean, if everything is equal, why wouldn't you go for the cheapest price? I mean, if I'm buying the same car, let's say there are two, pick a brand. There's two, I want to buy a Jeep. And there are 3 Jeep dealerships in Las Vegas. So it's the same Jeep. If I don't see a difference between the dealerships, guess what Jeep I'm going to buy? The cheapest one. But if I see that one dealership, if the salesperson makes a greater connection, and if I believe the service department is more efficient, if they talk about things that make me feel like a part of the family, like they're going to take care of me, I might pay $200, $300, $400 extra dollars for that Jeep. Hey, I might even rationalize what's an extra $500 if I'm financing it over 5-6 years. It's $100 a year. What? But if I don't see any difference, why would I pay a penny more? So that difference is important, but I want to bring up one more factor as well, too. And it's what the late Dr. Clayton Christensen wrote in his book, The Innovator's Dilemma, which may be the most profound business book of the last couple of decades. And what he talked about is it's the dilemma, it's the problem that happens when you innovate. And here you think, wait a minute, innovation is supposed to be great. Innovation is supposed to be good. I mean, look at how great Apple has done because of the innovations. And okay, so there's a problem inherent in that. All right, you come up with this great innovation. I create, a widget, whatever this is. Okay, I come up with this, and it's really innovative, and it really is something that drives business to us, and it's fantastic, and it's wonderful. And typically what most businesses start doing is they get such a structure built around this that they stop innovating. Or they come up with incremental advancements for this, and they don't come up with something new and innovative. They keep trying to improve this, even though it was the creation of this that made everything. So in other words, Apple not only needs to be improving the iPhone, they got to figure out how they can create the iPhone of hearing aids. I was talking about hearing aids today. How do you create something so amazing, so innovative? Now, part of how that started was that Steve Jobs and other people around him, they hated their phones. They didn't like their phones. They said, we can do better than this. But if you're Motorola that's making phones 24/7, you got a whole staff of people that are engineering and creating and developing phones. How come you can't come up with the iPhone? And the Innovator's Dilemma explains why. Because you got your whole staff of people, and you got all these folks working on improving that innovation that you already have and protecting that innovation that you already have, rather than trying to innovate and create the next one, which brings about the question for you in your business. Are you working harder to protect what you're already doing than to innovate and to change and to be distinctive? Are you working harder to protect what you're already doing than to innovate and to change and to be distinctive? Michelle, you're on target, right? Staying at the top requires constant reinventing yourself. To continue the football analogy, boy, I'm beating the sports analogies to death today, but to continue that analogy, think about what that means. If the Kansas City Chiefs, Super Bowl, Mike, I'm talking about your team here. If the Kansas City Chiefs go out and all they do this year is to run the same plays that got them to the Super Bowl last year, I'll promise you they're not getting back to the Super Bowl. You know why? Because the other side's already figured out how to defend those plays. If they don't reinvent and tweak and not just incrementally improve those plays, but if they don't come up with some new plays, they're not going back to the Super Bowl. If they don't tweak the lineup and try to improve at little spots, even though they won the championship, there's improvements we can all make. And the same is true in our businesses, right? Staying at the top requires constant reinvention. You got to offer new and exciting things to engage your customers. As Michelle says, it's absolutely on target. Charles, there you go. Well, and by the way, in case you tuned in late with the Distinction Summit coming up, Charles is one of the first folks that have signed up for it. So he's practicing what he's preaching here. But the post-pandemic program and the Distinction Summit, the Grow Live Academy is my buddy Ken Walls, and it's about live streaming. It's how I learned how to do this live streaming that we're doing. Yeah. You're not in a hurry to be the cheapest realtor in town, but see, there you go. But think about this. People say, what's the cost of the program? It's not the cost of the program is in if you don't do it. With you doing what you're going to be doing with live streaming, what you're doing, and with your investing in yourself, man, Benjamin Franklin said an investment in yourself pays the highest dividends. On Instagram, Bill mentions companies get to a point they start playing not to lose instead of playing to win. And I wrote about that in Iconic, Bill. You're exactly right. That's what playing not to lose is. It's, we got to protect the lead. And the prevent defense, as we call it. Isn't it funny? We always call it the prevent defense as opposed to the prevent defense. It's the prevent defense. I've never understood why we call it that, but the prevent defense often prevents winning. We try so hard to protect what we've got that we don't continue to play. If you were a part of the program the webinar that I did earlier this week, one of the things I quoted was this famous tennis coach who said, playing cautiously is not the same as playing smartly. Isn't that a great line? Playing cautiously is not the same thing as playing smartly. So what we have to understand is that if what we're doing is working harder to protect what we already have than to innovate and to change and be distinctive, we're going to have trouble. So I get back to that question for you. If somebody else is going to disrupt you, what would they do? And now, here's the question. You're going to write down what those businesses would do to disrupt you. Write it down. And then take a look at that list. Take a look at that list and say, if they could disrupt you doing these things, why aren't we doing this now? I mean, if you know that that's what somebody could do to come along and disrupt your business, why aren't you doing that to disrupt yourself? I mean, distinction is going to come when you disrupt yourself into distinction. Disrupt yourself into distinction. It's not being satisfied with where you are. It's not just doing the same thing over and over and over again. Familiarity doesn't breed contempt. My mom always used to say that. Familiarity breeds contempt. You probably heard that. It's not right. Familiarity doesn't breed contempt. It breeds complacency. We get kind of used to it. And so part of what we have to understand is that we can disrupt ourselves into distinction. This innovation, this creativity is a critical aspect of it. Quick kind of quasi-commercial. This is what we're going to go into depth in at the Distinction Summit, is how you do it and how you process that. So save the date. It's October 16th to 18th, the Distinction Summit. We'd sure love you to be there, because what we have to do is disrupt ourselves into distinction. Yeah, I'll leave you with this final thought. It's better than being disrupted into extinction. We would rather disrupt ourselves into distinction than to be disrupted into extinction. Make sense? So, to review what we talked about today, if you had new competition coming into your marketplace, whether it's a store that sets up across the street from you, whether it is the supermarket that comes to Crothersville, Indiana, while you own the one little grocery store like that we had to deal with, right? Or it could be Costco decides to sell the product that you sell or do the service that you provide. If you had new competition, what would you do? How would you respond? If they were going to disrupt you, what would they do? Write it down. And then you've got to ask yourself, first off, if they could disrupt you doing those things, why aren't you already doing it? We got to confront ourselves and saying, are we so busy working hard to protect the way the world is which we know it, hanging on, waiting till things get back to normal? How much have you heard that? Or even if you haven't heard it because people are afraid to say it, have you thought about that? Boy, when they just come up with a vaccine, everything's going to get back to the way it was. No, it's not. It's not. It's just not. World has changed. Life has changed. Times have changed. I saw a thing this morning that says we may be entering into the age of pandemics, that COVID-19 will pass and COVID-20 is going to come along. Who knows? But if they can do these things to disrupt you, why don't you go ahead and do it now? Find a way to disrupt yourself into distinction. Glenn, my pal Glenn, great to see you. What are you doing? And what is what you're doing keeping you from doing? Golly, you said it. That nails it. What are you doing And what is what you're doing keeping you from doing? Right? Because it's almost the old physics thing of every action has an equal and opposite reaction. And so the things that you do also prevent you from things that you should be doing but aren't doing. Yeah, exactly right, Glenn. What is what you're doing keeping you from doing? Hey, Tim, great to see you. Yeah, if only they stop making candy bars, we can get back to a normal weight. Tim, I've lost some weight, and I'm trying to get back to my original weight, which is 9 pounds, 8 ounces. Old joke, but I still like it. But yeah, if only they stop making candy bars, we get back to the way. If only they come up with a vaccine. If only. But it's not going to happen. So I'm going to say disrupting yourself into distinction is better than being disrupted into extinction. We've got to find a way to disrupt ourselves so that we can be distinctive in a hyper-competitive marketplace, whatever it is that we do. Hey, everybody, thanks so much for watching today. Check out DistinctionSummit.com. I look forward to catching up with you tomorrow on our next edition of Daily Distinction. Thanks for watching, whether it's live or on the replay. I look forward to talking to you again tomorrow.